The ultimate guide to hiring marketers for B2B teams. Welcome back to a fresh episode of Breaking B2B.com. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, founder over at Breaking B2B. And today, joining me, I've got Dan Malgran. Dan is the VP of Marketing over at Steno. He's also built multiple marketing and demand gen teams at startup companies and beyond. Dan, welcome to the show, sir. How are we doing?
Thanks, Sam. It is great to be here. I am doing very well. How are you?
Doing well, thank you, sir. Yeah, looking forward to this one. I was just saying to you before we hit record, this is a fresh topic for Breaking B2B. We've not done much in the way of hiring, especially on the marketing route. So I'm excited to dive in. My weakness especially is operations and marketing. Love marketing, operations and hiring rather. Love marketing, love selling, love creating content. But hiring and ops is certainly a weak point. So I'm going to learn a ton, and I'm sure everyone watching and listening will too. So as you might have known, we never beat around the bush on this show. We get straight into the topic at hand. So with that said, how does a B2B company know if they're ready to build out their marketing team and expand on that marketing engine? How do you know if you're ready?
Man. Okay. So at Steno, our audience are attorneys, lawyers, and I feel like I've adopted this mantra from our audience of the answer is always, well, it depends. It depends on what stage you're at. How big is your company? Where are you? What are you doing out in the market? I think if you are a brand, you're very small, you're a startup, you're a founder that's out there, and you've got a couple people in the team. It's your job to be the marketer. It's your job to be ops. It's your job to be a whole lot of different things. And it's your job to do that for as long as you possibly can to keep your expenses down and focus on what you need to do. And then after that, it might not even be you hire a marketing team. And I feel weird saying that as a marketer, because I'm always like, no, you should hire me. But maybe you hire a chief of staff, and that chief of staff runs the roles of your marketer and your VP of sales and your other pieces until you get to a point where it's like the efficiencies are hitting a ceiling. You're not able to get into the new markets. You're not able to get out there, or, you're having difficulty with product market fit. And you need somebody to come in and help you define these things and maybe tell you that you're just wrong, and that you need to reapproach this. You need to, everybody wants to go after enterprises because that's where the huge money is. But like maybe your product market fit is the small business, and you need to be told that. Or the opposite. And this is what happened when I came in at Steno. You have clear product market fit, but you're struggling to articulate that value prop out there. Steno is why it's the product market fittiest of the fit that I have seen. But as soon as I came in, it was very evident that nobody was saying the same things. We had different salespeople that were from the industry, other court reporting agencies, and they were pitching it like a court reporting agency. We had others that were pitching us like a tech company, and we're sort of a hybrid of the two. And so it was very clear that we need product marketing in here because we need to be able to build that matrix, tell everybody this is how we position ourselves. This is why we are different than everybody else. And I think if you are a founder, if you are, or CEO, and you're starting to think about bringing in a marketing team, you need to make sure that you also you're accounting for the budget for headcount and programs. I think we see this pretty often that somebody will bring in a single marketer, expect them to do everything. And once they pay that person, they realize, oh, we only have like $10,000 to do any program. So you're paying $100,000 plus for a marketer who is then spending less than their salary. You're not ready for marketing if that's if that's what you've got going on.
Are you tired of competitors ranking above you on Google, stealing traffic, leads, and mindshare from dream clients every time they're searching for your services or offers on Google? At Breaking B2B, we fix that with our unusual approach to SEO content marketing and websites. We craft B2B SEO strategies and websites for revenue, not vanity. Head over to breakingb2b.com to check our results, pricing, or to book a call with me. Great point. Great point. So let's break down a few of those points that you got into there. One of the first you said, I asked you when are you ready to hire a marketing team? You said could be to do with your efficiency, like how efficient you are. Tell us a bit more about what that means from a kind of B2B SaaS standpoint.
Sure. I mean, if we're talking about, you've got good customer acquisition. Your sales team is out there. They are making the sales, but you're not seeing that in the beginning, you'll start to see that constant growth. It'll be, win rates will continue to go up and revenue will continue to go up. And then there'll be a sort of stagnation. You've reached some sort of, plateau, and sales is just not able to get in the door on more places. They're going in and they're hearing, oh, well, what about these 5 competitors? I hadn't really heard of you guys before. How are you positioned? They're probably not going to ask how are you positioned, but how do you fit in that in the industry? When you start to hear those and your sales team is hitting that ceiling of the revenue is starting to slow, the win rates are starting to plateau. That is I think a very clear sign that you need to bring in marketing, and you need to bring in marketing not just to focus on performance based, but you need brand marketing at this point. You need to start that long-term establishment of who you are and building that mental availability that will help your sales team break through that plateau.
Almost sounds like listening out for signals from your prospects in the market. Like you say, maybe if competitors are constantly being mentioned, but you're not seeing your brand as much as you hoped. Like you say, your win rates start dropping, maybe inbound leads take a hit, and your sales team are kind of getting frustrated that there's just other options that are constantly top choice, and they always feel on the back foot.
I can give an in-market experience. At a previous company that I was in, the way that we sold into companies was sort of bottom up. And so we could get in and talk to the assistants or the secretaries or whomever, and they would be interested. They would be like, yeah, we can use your services. Right. But as soon as it got to the actual point of having to sign, senior leaders would say, I haven't heard of them. I do know this other company. Let's go with them. And that was regular. That was something like 40% of our loss reasons. That is a very clear sign that sales isn't going to get in. They're not going to make that end game for you. You need more. You need to be positioned for those senior leaders. Even if you're not selling directly to them, they need to know who you are. They need to see thought leadership stuff out there so that when they're brought this, they go, oh yeah, I know that name. That's fine. We can use them. I think what's the term? You never get fired for hiring IBM or something like that. You need to be out there because people know the name and recognize it, and they don't feel bad that they're going to be hiring this company.
Well, yeah, that's it. It's all risk aversion, isn't it?
It's all risk aversion.
Folks, especially in larger scale B2B corporations, marketers want to feel safe with their choice. And I suppose if they're investing thousands and thousands of dollars, which isn't theirs, which is their investors or their whoever runs the company, they want to make sure that their job's not on the line because they invested a ton into a piece of tech or a service that's not going to cost them the job. So yeah, get that. You raised a good point as well just now, just to wrap this segment up, that you should bear in mind that you're going to need to set aside budget for the headcount as well as the actual programs or the initiatives or actually the tactics or the strategies or the channels that you're going to go down. Is that something, because I'm pretty sure that happens a lot, judging by the amount of running an SEO agency, like the amount of times that I speak to marketers that just have completely unrealistic expectations about what's going to move the needle from a budget perspective. Is that something you see a lot where kind of folks make that mistake, maybe invest all the cash into headcount and then there's not much left to actually get stuff done?
Absolutely. I think I've seen it at very small organizations that are just hiring their first marketer or their first two marketers. And I've seen it at large organizations, ones that I've been in where we were just wildly over the amount of people that we need for the programs that we're running. And so you're suddenly spending, the majority of your money, your budget on the actual headcount, and then those people then all have to justify their jobs and try to get as much done with as little as possible. I think if you are evaluating this and evaluating a marketing team, it's very much like you probably have to have a conversation with somebody, maybe a consultant, maybe somebody else, of just like where we are right now, how much money is it going to cost to get this off the ground, and what's it going to cost in a year, in 2 years? Because I think a lot of the times you come in and you're like, okay, well, we built a marketing team. There's 10 people here. We're spending $1 million a year, $2 million a year on the discretionary programs budget. We hit that's going to hit a plateau. You're going to, in a couple years, you're going to need more and more and more. So if you're not like, if you don't have the buy-in of the leadership team of like, this is how we build it and where we're going to go in the long term, everybody's going to be unhappy.
Were you the first marketing hire at your company?
I am the first marketing hire at my company. In sort of. There was a marketing team when they first started the company. They went all in on marketing and no in on sales, and that did not go anywhere. Especially in our particular industry, which is very sales led. Yep. And so they switched and got rid of all marketing and went all in on sales, and that went very well, very successful. And then we started to hit a plateau, and it was very evident that like incrementality of marketing is going to help us here. So I was brought in to build a marketing team a little over a year ago. And I was the sole marketer for about 3 months before my first two hires started, which were product marketing and field.
Okay. And yeah, I'd be curious to know, like, and this is very situational, depending, I suppose, on how well funded the company is, the size and their markets. But is there a strategy you recommend? So in your company's case, it sounds like they got rid of the marketing, went sales led, realized they had the bottlenecks you just outlined, and then went back to having a marketing team starting with you. Like, is there a process that you think is sustainable, i.e. should companies look to hire a VP of marketing and slowly get them to hire internally? Or should it be a case of go a bit more aggressive? Like, is there a best play?
It depends, which will be my answer in so many different things. I think it often comes down to who you hire and how you hire. So there are, and I've seen this across LinkedIn and other spheres of, there's this belief that when you're at the VP or above level, you're not really in the weeds anymore. It's your job to be the strategic person, which is true. Like, you should be the strategic person and setting the vision. But if you are joining a small organization that is building their marketing team for the first time, like, I'm sorry, you're a tactical marketer. And so my strategy of coming in is like, I will handle all of the marketing. In my first 2 weeks, was writing RFPs with the sales team. I was calling clients. I was calling prospects. I was setting everything up. I was in Canva designing ads and writing copy and doing all of the things that marketers have to do, usually with a team. And my strategy of like, who do I hire and when, comes to a point of like, what do I know are my strengths? My strengths are not content marketing. I understand it. I have a very good vision for where I want it to go. I am not very good at implementing it. So my assumption was my first hire is probably going to be content, because I know it works in this industry. I know that that's one of my big weaknesses. And day 3 on this job, I opened up a rec for a product marketer because of what we talked about before. I listened to multiple sales reps' pitches, and they all said different things about our tech. And I realized that nobody has given them the tools that they need to be on the same page, be talking about us in the same way, and sell us in the same way. So product marketing had to come in, because I can do some of that, but it's also a weakness of mine. And it's so important to us as an organization that it needs to have somebody dedicated to that time. And field was the other aspect of that. Our sales team was running all field independently. Every sales rep could spend their budget to go to events or run trade show things, but nobody was sort of overseeing it. And we were spending quite a lot of money out in the field. So that needed somebody that could own it and take it further and start to centralize it so that we could be efficient with our spend. So my approach to this is always like, where are we going to have the biggest impact that I can't do myself? And then that is your foundation to then continue to expand.
Yeah. I mean, those are some sound tips. Listening to your sales team, or at least listening to prospecting sales calls, feedback directly from the sales team as well, is you can never go too far wrong if you're getting a holistic view, if you're listening to the market, if you're listening to the sales team and kind of putting those two together. They're always going to give you a reasonable idea of what's going on. And big fan of, like you say, understanding where you excel, understanding where your weak spots are and hitting those. Like that makes perfect sense.
If you're a siloed marketer, you're not doing marketing right. You need to be one of the most cross-collaborative teams in the organization, because that's the only way you know externally, internally, what's going on, who is talking about it, where are our biggest weaknesses, what's the journey that people are, where are the gaps in the journey. There's no way to do it if you're just sitting in marketing and doing nothing else.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to, like, when you've identified those weaknesses and when you've outlined what you want to, the first hires you want to bring in, what should that process look like?
The way I like to approach my first hires is looking for a T-shaped marketer, somebody that can go wide, has experience in multiple things, but has an expertise. So the product marketer that I brought in has run a marketing team, a small team, and has done all of the different pieces, but she excels in the product marketing aspect. So I knew that I am going to have to be writing emails. I've been writing emails. I've been doing these different pieces. I do need some support in that. So the first hires are going to have to be able to handle multiple aspects of it and be comfortable with sort of the ambiguity of, like, your job is product marketing, but also you're kind of a content marketer. Also, you're kind of doing demand gen with me. And you need to know that, like, that's not the end. Like, we are going to bring in people as we scale to take those back so that you don't have to keep doing those.
You need
self-starters and problem solvers and people that are very comfortable with change, especially at small scaling startups. Processes change. They need to be comfortable with ambiguity of, like, there's no plan here. There's no processes built. There's no SOPs. We don't have Asana with all of our project management going on. You and I, we're going to have to build that as we're trying to get this all going at the same time. So people that are very comfortable with that and have not just gotten into one role and they've been in that role and they're not comfortable stepping out of it.
Yeah. I mean, working in a startup is so vastly different to a mid-market company or even enterprise, where processes are just so much slower moving and everything takes time. There's strict procedures, so many sign-offs, whereas if you're in a startup, like, it sounds like you are used to, just like me, like, everything's moving at 100 miles per hour. You're basically involved in touching everything, overseeing everything, involved in everything. Like you said, when you were brought in as a VP marketing, you weren't directing people, you were getting shit done. And yeah, so that is the angle I come from as well, which I enjoy for my sins. A glutton for punishment, I guess. But I think being transparent and explaining to those hires, like, it will start like this, but it will grow out as well, is equally important.
I think that is an incredibly good point of, like, the transparency in the hiring process is incredibly important. I told everyone that was coming in that, like, you are going to be in the weeds, and the weeds are going to be deep. There is a lot to get done. We are building a marketing team for an organization that's growing at like 100% per year. And all the other things are established. There's already a big sales team. There's already an ops team. There's already all of these different things. So it's just us that are the newbies that are growing this thing. So there's going to be high expectations of deliverables while you're trying to set a strategy, while you're trying to build all of these processes in the back end, so that a year from now we're not in the same situation of like, we don't have templates for things, we don't know who goes to what. So being very honest is incredibly important, because you're not just interviewing them, they're interviewing you. And if they aren't comfortable with that, and they don't have to say it in the interview, but it's, if they might bow out. And I've had multiple people bow out of the interview process with me when I explained how much work there's going to be, that there is a light that we're headed towards. It's there, I promise, but like, it's going to be a lot of work to get there. You need to make sure that they understand that, because you don't want a bad hire, or a whatever the word is now that they're using, of like, it's just not a good fit, because that then takes away time that you are going to end up having to do the same thing over again.
It's not all that different from running a sales call, is it really? If you're transparent about who you're a good fit and who you're a poor fit for. In my world, clients churn, but in the hiring world, then whoever you recruit as part of your marketing team is going to churn, because their expectations were unrealistic. They might have thought they were going to sit and have an easy job ticking boxes and approving spreadsheets, when really they've got to get their hands dirty and actually get the work done, and perhaps do stuff that's a bit outside their comfort zone, and maybe learn some stuff on the fly, or maybe work to tight deadlines and whatever it may be. But like you say, if you set those guidelines up front, it's always going to be the best move. We have a lot of B2B marketers that tune in, but perhaps for any revenue leaders or founders that are listening or watching, and maybe they're perhaps considering hiring a first marketer, whether that was a marketing leader, VP marketing, CMO, whatever their plan is, are there any tips that you advise on what they should be looking out for, what they should be asking, if they're perhaps not so in the weeds like you and I are?
Yeah, I think it's sort of twofold. Revenue leaders often look at marketing as sales at scale, and it's not. And you need to acknowledge that it does not operate in the same way as a sales organization, especially if you are going after larger organizations, you are going after the enterprise. The work that you do as marketing is not, you're not seeing the results this quarter. You might not be seeing the results next quarter. Unlike a sales rep that might see those results very quickly, if it's like, they're able to impact quickly. Marketing, especially if you're trying to build your brand, trying to get that awareness, this is going to be down the road. So you need to be comfortable understanding the expectations of what marketing can and can't do, and also setting that in your interview process, and talking about it openly of like, here is our short-term expectations, and here is our long-term expectations. And you need to align that with whatever marketing leader that you're interviewing with, that they are also coming to you with like their understanding of short-term versus long-term, and that they are approaching you of like, they're not just promising you a bunch of leads. And I heard this in my hiring process, post-hire, of the other people that were interviewed, and many of them were just like, yeah, I can hit these lead goals and lead goals. And I was one of the few that was like, okay, that's unrealistic. We can't hit that type of lead goal, and here is why. And here is what we will do for a long-term approach, that we will get away from necessarily focusing on leads, and we get more into building communities and building these spheres of influence. You need to look at somebody that is able to understand sort of both aspects and push back on you. That if you are setting things that are unrealistic, I feel like this is why CMOs and heads of marketing have such short tenure. They're just accepting what happens in the interview because they want the job or they need the job. And they're just, both sides are coming at this with totally different expectations of what it's really going to be. And then, 12 months later, you're getting a new head of marketing. You need to be aligned, and you need to have very open and honest conversations. Like we were just talking of hiring your marketers, revenue leaders need to have those open and honest conversations.
No, that's right. And I think that's smart as well, one, for the marketer themselves to push back if something's unrealistic or not feasible, or whatever it may be, whether it's lead targets or whatever it is. But then also, like you said, whoever's running the interview, I suppose, to have realistic expectations of what actually can be done. What's your advice, going along the same vein, what's your advice to actually suss out? Because I've always struggled. We've talked about on the show some time ago about interviewing salespeople and how that can be an absolute game in itself, because nearly every salespeople can talk the talk in an interview, gets to actually prospecting, whether that's cold calling, cold email, whatever their cold outreach is. They might say, I prefer to get referrals, or I prefer inbound leads. It's like, well, you were a completely different person on the interview. Like, now you're not picking up the phone to generate leads or whatever it may be, and they're not prospecting or closing or whatever the weakness is. But with marketers, obviously a completely different kettle of fish, especially if they're drilled into an industry, whether it's product marketing, field marketing, events, demand gen, whatever it may be. How do you check if they're actually, the proof's in the pudding, if they can actually deliver what they say they can?
I think there's a couple approaches here. One, I am not a huge fan of practical exercises. Like, some companies want to do a practical exercise for every level that they're hiring, and that's kind of ridiculous. I think it's probably worthwhile if somebody's going to be leading a department, and give them something that they need to do that's tangible, that you can see and like understand, and make them talk through it. So I had to do one for Steno, and build out a marketing plan, and then essentially defend it against a panel of executives and senior leaders. And I think that really helps them get an understanding. One, how does this marketer approach your organization, your industry? If they are new to an industry, then how do they approach learning about it in that sort of short amount of time? I would never expect them to get it all right, especially if they're new to the industry. But understanding how they're approaching it is really important to knowing if they're going to be able to be in the role. I think if you are a leader that is hiring a marketer and you don't have any marketing experience, you've never done it, you've never hired for it, and you don't have anybody on your team that does, it might be worthwhile bringing in a consultant that does know marketing and can sit on and be a part of it. If you are VC backed or PE backed, you probably have that consultant through your investor network. You can bring in the CGO of your VC firm, or some other marketing leader that they've got in there. Just call them in, have them be a part of the process, because I think it is important. In the same way that salespeople can BS sales because if they are a good salesperson, they should be able to do that. I think a lot of marketers can do that too. There's a lot of terms and things.
Just look at LinkedIn.
Just look at LinkedIn.
A good game on LinkedIn.
Especially if you've got ChatGPT, you can talk about anything that you want. So having somebody that has some experience, I think, is worthwhile when you're bringing in your leadership.
Yeah.
And then after that, directors maybe need a practical exercise. Below that, I am very anti-exercise, and give me your results. Give me a portfolio of what you have done. Let me see exactly what it is.
I was going to say, do you ask for much in the way of evidence?
I do, yeah. I ask for some kind of portfolio of work. At least give me some of the campaigns that worked. Give me a couple campaigns that didn't, and your learnings from them.
Yeah.
In my interview process, I ask very long-winded and sort of ambiguous questions here and there interspersed, because I want to understand how you approach a question like that as well. Because some people will then stop, they'll ask me to break it down. I want to answer this part of the question, this part of the question, this part of the question. Make sure I get it all right. Other people make the assumption that they fully understood the question, and then they miss part of what I asked in the middle of it. All of these are kind of like ways that you can start to suss out how do they approach these things. Have they walked the walk? If they are a marketing leader and they have to deal with the sales organization or other executive organizations, those people are going to ask a million questions, or they're going to have a million things that they want done. You are going to have to break that down. You are going to have to approach it in a process where you can step by step get it done. So in the interview process, I like to sort of simulate what other parts of my organization, how they're going to approach you.
Yeah, I suppose, depending on the speciality or the niche of the marketer, I suppose you could get them to walk you through kind of from a tactical level, like how they've had certain wins. And like you said, I think fails is nice as well, because it's not all we're all messing up all the time, and if
Oh,
they
yeah.
can walk you through that and what they learn, I think something I'd look out for as well, especially, is like, I love running marketing experiments at Breaking B2B. We try stupid stuff all the time and see what works, what doesn't. But I think if you can get someone that's actively doing something of their own initiative as well, i.e., I don't know, maybe they were at a company before and the company was unsure about starting a podcast, but of their own will, in their spare time, maybe they interviewed like some of the ABM account lists, like the top 50 accounts, and they just started that. They I don't know, they invested in Riverside or Zoom or StreamYard, and they just fired up and started interviewing them and doing it, and then they showed the exec team, like, wow, like this person's like gone off their own back, done all this stuff. Like, that's really impressive. I think if someone can take the time to experiment, or it doesn't have to be something for their company, it could be their own thing. They've started their own show, they started posting on LinkedIn, they started a YouTube channel, they started, I don't know, creating content with focus clients, whatever, but they've done something off their own back with a hypothesis to see if it works. I think that's a really nice trait of a marketer that's a bit more creative.
I love that. Yeah. And our director of content was, recognizes that AI is taking the job of many content marketers. And so took it upon herself separately on her own of building out how to use AI in her job search and a whole bunch of other pieces, and sort of walked me through like what she's been doing to learn AI and get really dig down deep into it, because she recognized that that's going to be a backbone of a content team now, let alone in the future. And so, seeing somebody take that initiative, I think, is a huge part of, I love that. Yeah, 100%.
Marketers aren't going to like this, but do you, because they might get fired, do you recommend like doing a trial period with new hires? Because I imagine, especially kind of newer businesses or startups that haven't had a marketing team or engine before are probably even more risk averse. Like, what does that look like? Are there any recommendations around that? Because we all know that you could hire someone, but a few months into it, they just might not be the right fit for whatever reason, our fault or their fault, or somewhere in between.
Yeah, I think so. We've taken kind of this approach through some agencies that we have used. So, there's a whole bunch of the sort of marketers for hire kind of agencies out there where you can get them in part-time and see what their work is like, and then start adding more and more hours. We've done that with a couple of people, especially on the graphic design side of, we have a very particular brand, and it's kind of weird. We've got rainbow essential, like gradient colors on everything in an industry
like my background.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's in a very professional, like, we're going after lawyers, and all of our competitors are blue and white, and, they button up everything. And so we take the approach of like, we're a sort of humans first kind of marketing of just like, this is who we are. We are fun. We are exciting. We are different. But that's hard to grasp for some brand managers, for some designers, for some writers.
Right.
And so being able to sort of test them out, throw them in and see how they do with it. We do that with some content writers as well, and see how they handle it. And then we have sort of a place where we expect that we will be able to hire them full time. If you're looking at marketing leaders, I have never been a fractional leader, so I don't know that I could particularly speak to it, but I do know quite a few people that have been fractional CMOs or such. And I think that could be worthwhile for some smaller organizations, because you shouldn't hire a CMO if you are a small organization. Like, I think a lot of places are just like, oh, well, that's what you do, and you hire that. But like, you can get the expertise from a fractional person and help you scale until you get to a point where it is worthwhile bringing that person in full time.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wasn't even thinking that, actually. I was thinking more in terms of like trial periods. Like, I don't know if that's...
I have never done a trial period, so I don't know that I can speak to it. Those are the only ways that I've sort of approached it.
That's fair.
So I don't want to give anybody bad advice on something I've never done.
No, I appreciate that. And then the last point we wanted to cover was using agencies, which I think you've just touched on, versus agency versus hiring in-house, because I think you've got some opinions on that.
Yeah, I do. And I think some of our agencies have opinions on me and how I approach it as well. I think I've seen a whole bunch on LinkedIn recently of people that are, I don't know if they're trolling for engagement, but they're just like, agencies are awful and you should never use them. They're all BSing you. And you should only hire people in-house because then you can keep tabs on them. And I think that's wildly wrong. As I think a lot of things on LinkedIn that I spot as I advance in my career are just like, why? That's not what. Okay. Clearly I need to just remove you from people I'm following. But agencies, I think, are incredibly helpful, especially early on. There's a lot of stuff that needs to get done that you aren't going to be able to do, or it's going to take you a while to hire in for those roles. You don't want to just rush in and hire a director of demand gen just because you need that person. You can get agencies that have high expertise. They can help you test channels before you're committing to having that person. That's a big part of it for me. We try to expand into a bunch of different channels, especially as we're going into new markets. I don't know how those are going to work out. And if I hire somebody to just own out of home, that may really hurt me in the long run because that didn't work out for us. And I don't need that person in-house. I think if you are scaling very quickly, so like we are obviously, as I mentioned, the company is larger. There's the other organizations in the company are established. So marketing has to scale very quickly. So we brought in agencies to handle paid media or our email, and we've had some graphic design agencies, and we've had all these different pieces to help support until we feel that like there is a consistent amount of work here and we need somebody to be in that role that is owning it. And they may still have agency support. We wildly adopt a hybrid model with our agencies. So there's a lot of overflow work, or there's a lot of execution and tactical work, and we'll keep the strategy in-house, and then we'll bring in agencies to handle the execution. I think it gives you a lot of flexibility.
I think that's smart, really. Like, a lot of it is, from what I understand, testing out, especially if you're bringing in marketers that aren't generalists, but are coming in to own a certain program or a certain strategy or a certain channel. Like, it kind of makes sense to test it out, whether that is with a contractor or an agency. See if it's actually a viable channel after a good test, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. If it does well, great. Maybe we scale up with the agency, or maybe we hire in-house. If not, we cut it, we learn, we move on to the next thing. Like, I think that's smart. It's kind of similar to how we're building Breaking B2B. We basically have a bunch of trusted contractors, getting to the point now where we may have to hire our first operations and kind of account management side of things, but very much the way that we've kind of grown here so far. So I think that's a smart move, especially for more kind of startup geared organizations.
Yeah, and I think, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but if you are going to go a hybrid model, this is a pitfall that I fell into. We had quite a few agencies, and I don't think I treated them like vendors, like agencies, and keeping them sort of at arm's length of like, we give you work, you do that work, and then we move on and do other stuff. So we are sort of switching that in 2025 and getting a much more integrated approach to how we do our agencies. Now that we know that like this is the path, we are not going to do everything in-house. We are planning, monthly sort of summits between our agencies if they all interact in the same ways. So we utilize an agency for marketing mix modeling and an art agency that helps support demand gen, who they will end up working together because a lot of the stuff that the demand gen agency is doing very much impacts how we do our modeling. So having them talk to each other and not having us just be the intermediary where we miss things or we don't realize that these things are important or we just don't do them. If you're going to go a hybrid approach, you need to integrate a lot more and really think of them as partners rather than vendors and agencies. I'll put this as a blanket apology to the vendors and agencies that I have worked with in the past where I did not understand that and I did not treat them as such. And we had to part ways because we had different expectations of what that was supposed to be. And trying to learn from that. And this is like this hybrid approach and how we want to bring it all together is sort of, I think, the only way that you can really effectively utilize agencies and in-house people.
I think you raised a good point at the start of the conversation. Like, this is going off on a bit of a tangent, but good marketers like yourself push back on it against unrealistic expectations. I think it's the same with agencies though. Like us, if we're working with a prospect that's saying, like, I don't know, Q1 we want to do X amount of inbound signups or demos or booked calls through SEO within this crazy time period, I'll say, look, that's completely unrealistic. Like, I'm not running a paid campaign for you here. Like, you've not done much in the way of organic search. We're gonna have to build a solid foundation. That's ridiculous. Like, we can do this. This is realistic. But otherwise, you're better off going to a sales rep that's going to promise you the world and not deliver, because that ain't me.
Yeah, exactly. I think expectations are important on all sides, and being able to push back and being comfortable to push back. You know, you're never going to have a successful relationship if you're not comfortable talking about some of the tough things.
Yeah,
personally or with vendors.
Definitely. Just a good business lesson to end on. So with that, Dan, thanks very much for the conversation. Really useful, not just for myself, but I'm sure everyone tuning in that's thinking about building out their marketing team. So please do tell us more about how everyone tuning in can learn more about yourself, connect with you, anything you'd like to share.
Sure, absolutely. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me there. Dan Malgran, just connect with me. Say you found me through Breaking B2B. And I'll be happy to chat with you about any marketing or beyond. I like kayaking and hiking, so you know we can expand it beyond that. If you happen to be a lawyer watching the Breaking B2B podcast, Steno is your court reporting agency. Steno.com. Check us out. We are very clearly the best.
Awesome. Got to be some B2B marketers from law firms, I reckon.
Gotta be. There has to be.
Gotta be. Drop us a message if so. It'd be awesome to hear from you. So thanks very much, Dan. Really enjoyed the chat.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Sam.
Cheers, sir. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, why not join thousands of legends enjoying my unusual B2B marketing weekday emails for some lesser known tips, fresh podcast updates, as well as unusual experiments around SEO and B2B marketing. Head over to breakingb2b.com, hit that newsletter tab. So with that, I shall catch you on the next one. Thanks very much for tuning in.